Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be looking at ACE International History's AS level, chapter 1.2. So, the essential question for this chapter is what was the impact of imperial expansion on international relations? Here are all of the mini units within this chapter. So, first we have 1.2a, which covers the impact of growth of overseas empires on relations between European nations. 1.2b, which talks about disputes with China over imperial expansion, and overall it talks about the Boxer Rebellion. And 1.2c, which talk about the tensions between Britain and Germany over South Africa. And finally, 1.2d, which show the attempts to resolve tensions between imperial nations. Before we begin, there is one key term that I would like to inform you guys about, which is something that we'll see in 1.2c and 1.2d, which is the scorched earth. And basically, this was a battle tactic in which an army deliberately burns crops and property in an area to deny the enemy food and shelter. 1.2a. In the late 1800s, European nations completely competed fiercely for colonies, resources, and pride, which risked starting wars. In 1898, Britain and France nearly went to war over Sudan in the Fashoda incident, but later reached a compromise. Even though rivalries created tensions, European powers managed to avoid war from 1871 all the way to 1914 by making compromises. Germany's new Kaiser, Wilhelm II, pushed for overseas colonies and a stronger navy, which increased competition with Britain and France. Britain feared Germany's growing navy, which threatened its control of the seas and security. France also felt threatened by Germany's actions and worked with Britain in the 1904 Entente Cordiale agreement to settle disputes and oppose Germany. In 1905, Kaiser Wilhelm challenged France. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. let me continue. So in 1905, Wilhelm challenged France and claimed in Monaco, leading to the Algiers crisis and worsening Germany's relations with Britain and France. Sorry guys, I might be stuttering a little bit because it's just so hard for me to say some of these words, but I'm really trying my best. Okay, although Europe's main powers avoided direct wars with each other, disputes in places like China, such as the Boxer Rebellion, which we will get into in the next mini section, showed how imperialism created global tensions. So, 1.2b focuses on how imperialism increased global tension, especially in Africa and China. One key example is the Entente Cordiale, where Britain and France ended their rivalry and agreed to work together mainly to settle conflicts over African colonies. However, this did not stop competition, since countries like Germany still wanted more power. In the North Africa, Germany challenged France's control in Morocco, which increased tensions between European nations. At the same time, China was weakened and forced to accept foreign influence after losing wars. This led to unfair treaties, economic problems, and anger among Chinese citizens. So that is kind of why I was repeating what happened in 1.2a, just as a very, very quick refresher as to why the Chinese citizens were angered. So that anger that they had caused the Boxer Rebellion, where Chinese groups tried to remove foreign control, but they were defeated, and China became even more controlled by outside powers. In Africa, the Boer War showed how far Britain would go to gain resources like gold and diamonds. Overall, imperialism created rivalry, conflict, and instability, which helped lead to larger global tensions and eventually will contribute to World War One. Okay, so this is a longer chapter or section, so just buckle up. This is 1.2c, where we talk about more into depth the tensions between Britain and Germany over South Africa. So, Chinese nationalists started the Boxer Rebellion to fight foreign control, but an alliance of countries defeated them, forcing China to pay large compensation and leaving the nation humiliated. By the 1900s, foreign power controlled most of China and worked together to protect their influence, which also caused rivalries as each nation tried to expand its own power. British immigration to South Africa caused tension with Dutch settlers, the Boers, especially over language, laws, and the end of slavery. The British fought constant border wars with native tribes in the 19th century, and one major conflict was the Anglo Zulu Wars, where the Zulus first won but were later defeated. The First Boer War broke out in the 1880s, and although the Boers won independence, Britain kept the right to oversee their foreign relations and military presence. Gold discoveries in Transvaal in 1886 brought more British settlers, but the Boer government under Paul Kruger limited their rights, causing tensions and failed uprising. Jameson attacked the Transvaal, but his forces were quickly defeated by the Boers, which upset other European nations and caused tension between Britain and Germany. When Kaiser Wilhelm II congratulated the Krugers behind their back, Marshall agreed that the telegram was meant to teach Britain a lesson, boost Germany's reputation, and show support for Boer independence, while Britain saw it as proof that Germany wanted to challenge them. In 1899, Kruger demanded British to withdraw and full independence for the Transvaal, but when Britain refused, the Second Boer War began. Britain eventually captured Pretoria in 1900, and after years of guerrilla fighting, the Boers surrendered in 1902 under the Treaty of Veralgening. Sorry for that absolute butcher. Although Britain won the war, it revealed weakness in the army and killed 22,000 soldiers and cost 200 million pounds. Britain was also criticized for its harsh, scorched earth tactics. This is our key term that I mentioned earlier. And for placing Boers' families in deadly concentration camps, where about 30,000 civilians died. Emily Holosius described the door and crawled conditions in Boer Wars concentration camps where food, water, and shelter and extremely limited was common. Showed how hard it was for Britain to defeat its empire and divided British politics and left the country isolated as other nations commended its actions. European nations competed for colonies to grow their wealth and power, but leaders worked to avoid wars. European powers agreed on rules for dividing Africa, including free passage on major rivers, ending slavery, and required nations to prove real control over any territory they claimed. Okay, final stretch, guys. This is 1.2D, and these talk about the attempts to resolve tensions between imperial nations. So, European nations competed for colonies for increase in power and wealth, but leaders tried to avoid war through diplomacy. The Berlin Conference created rules for dividing Africa. The conference helped reduce the risk of war as countries agreed to negotiate disputes instead of fighting. The conference also allowed powers to divide Africans, while in China, nations ignored the Chinese government by creating spheres of influence. Even with these agreements, tensions grew. The Treaty of Shimonoseki gave Japan control of Port Arthur after its victory over China. Russia forced Japan to give back Port Arthur to China, and Japan could resist the combined powers of three European nations, so it withdrew. But Russia quickly took control of the area while other European countries also gained influence in China. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. My next video will be on 1.3, so stay tuned for that. It'll be out shortly. I'll see you then. Goodbye.